Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Kenneth Holland. I'm the Chief of Party for the USAID Higher Education System Strengthening Activity Project. And it's a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you to enjoy and learn from this very important webinar. The webinar is on climate resilience in Pakistan. And the theme today is water scarcity challenges in Pakistan. And I'll say a little bit about the HESSA project before we begin. So this is a project designed to improve the system of higher education in Pakistan. And it's divided into three components. The first is leadership, where we provide training for vice chancellors, deans, department chairs and women leaders at the 16 participating universities. And then the second component is teaching and learning and research. And this initiative falls under that component, component B, where we're helping universities strengthen their capacity to conduct important research for the development of Pakistan. And then the third component is student success, where we help universities improve the services that they provide to students so that they become more employable once they graduate. This series of webinars is part of an initiative we call the Research Coordination Network, or RCN, and it's focused on climate resilience. And the purpose of the Research Coordination Network is to connect you, the researchers, with government officials who have the authority and the funding to carry out some of your proposals that you think will help improve climate resilience in Pakistan. Secondly, we're hoping that the researchers will collaborate with each other. And thirdly, we'll write research proposals that will be funded and will result in research that's relevant to tackling the effects of climate change in Pakistan. So I'll ask the moderator, Dr. Malik Mohammed Akhtar, to write a report following the webinar in which he will describe how this webinar has furthered the goals and objectives of the Research Coordination Network. So it's my great pleasure to turn over the microphone to Dr. Malik Mohammed Akhtar, Associate Professor, Department of Environmental Science at the Balochistan University of Information Technology, Engineering, and Management Sciences in Quetta. Please, Dr. Akhtar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kenneth. It's a great pleasure for me to host this webinar today. Very good morning, everyone from Newton University, and welcome to the webinar. I would like to thank USAID and HESSA project team for providing me an opportunity to moderate session. Today is the fifth webinar on the webinar series under climate resilience in Pakistan. This theme with the water scarcity challenges in Pakistan. Water use is not limited to drinking and domestic purpose. Water plays a role for food security, energy production, regulating climate pattern. Even the survival of life is not possible without availability of appropriate quantity of water resources. 4 billion people, almost 2/3 of the world population, experience severe water scarcity for at least 1 month each year. Half of the world population could be living in areas facing water scarcity by 2025. Pakistan is water scarce country with per capita water availability less than 1,000 cubic meter today. About 20% of whole population of Pakistan has access to safe drinking water, while remaining 80% of population is forced to use unsafe drinking water due to scarcity of safe and healthy drinking water resources. Pakistan has the world's fourth highest rate of water user. This makes our economy more water intensive than other regional countries. Pakistan is the third largest user of groundwater for irrigation in the world. Pakistan water crisis is explained mainly by rapid population growth followed by climate change, poor water management, inefficient infrastructure, and water pollution. Today's webinar glorious with the national and international speaker having good achievements in the field of environment, water resources management, software application to solve different environmental problems. Let me to give a very brief introduction of our today honorable speaker. First speaker, Professor Dr. Muhammad Irfan Khan. Let me share the agenda. Dr. Khan is a professor of environmental science and having the Dean Faculty of Environmental Science, International Islamic University, Islamabad. He has an experience of 39 years working in different universities. His expertise in environmental assessment, environmental governance, hydrology management, climate impacts, environmental security, and environmental diplomacy. He has supervised more than 50 MS and 15 PhD scholars and published 80 research articles in international index journals. He is the author of 4 book chapters and he published 3 books. Today he will share his experience on the topic climate change and water scarcity nexus in Pakistan. Warmly welcome, dear sir. Second speaker, Dr. Rabail Urooj. Dr. Rabail Urooj is Assistant Professor, Department of Environmental Science at Sardar Bahadur Khan Women University, Quetta, Balochistan. Currently, she is involved in groundbreaking project in collaboration with NCSU as co-PI funded by US State Department aims to develop the next generation of female environmentalists. Her specialization to employ the mathematical and the computational models to simulate the environmental systems. Her today presentation title is Geospatial Techniques for Water Resources Monitoring and Sustainable Management. Thanks for joining. Third speaker, Dr. J. Dr. J is a groundwater specialist with Ecoseal Developments Private Limited and affiliated with the Charleston University as a professor. He has provided research and consultancy services to the ACR, ADB, ICBA, and World Bank for water resources projects in Australia, Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. In Pakistan, the collaboration research projects aim to improve the management of Pakistani vital groundwater resources for improved food security and livelihood. The title of his today talk, The Future of Groundwater Irrigation and Its Availability in South Punjab. Your presence is honor for us. Thanks. Without further delay, I would like to invite our today first speaker to join the session, Dr. Muhammad Irfan Khan Sahab for his presentation. Dr. Irfan Sahab.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akhtar Malik. I think let me share the screen first. My topic about the nexus between water scarcity and the climate change. That's really very standard. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's okay now. Now, my context and the nexus I will explain first because water is a lifeline for the Pakistan in its geological situation and its geohydrological situation and its environmental settings. Water resources are too much vulnerable to climate change because the third largest ice reserve after these poles is in our northern area. The impact of climate change on water resources, that is obvious, and consequences of climate change impact on water resources, and the challenges of climate change impact on water resources. So these are the main 4 areas that should be, I think, considered for anything. Now, coming to the water scarcity. Water scarcity is a frightening situation that is already happening in Pakistan. And we have a water surplus country to water stress country and leading towards a water scarcity. Because the per capita availability of water has been decreasing because of the population growth. And second reason is our inefficient use of water resources, particularly in our agriculture system. Keeping in view all these things, Pakistan ranks number 14 out of a list of 17 extremely high risk water countries like Saudi Arabia and the deserted countries. We are at the number 7 right now. And over 80% of our total population in the country that faces severe scarcity for at least 1 month in a year. And if the situation remains unchanged, the whole country may face water scarcity within the next few days, or next few years, sorry. So considering these facts and the latest studies which has been carried out in the last couple of years, we are really concluding that we are heading towards scarce value. Now, my context for this today's talk, climate change nexus with the water security, in fact, is in the context of environmental security. In the environmental security in the 3 paradigms related to the water security that we need for the ecological habitat to remain intact, for the domestic consumption, industrial consumption. They are directly linked with the water security because we have riverine, we have lakes, and all these things, they need water to flow, that we call environmental flows. Domestic usage is being increased with the what you call the change in the lifestyle. And industrial, if you need to develop industry, that will definitely require more water. Agriculture, that is the main source of food security, is mainly based on irrigation system, and inefficient irrigation right now that really made it vulnerable, and we have a risk of the food security in the coming years. Then energy, we were used to be surplus from the hydropower, but now it's energy mix. We have thermal and other sources over there, but still the need clean and cheap energy source is the hydropower, and we have a big potential for that. And if you're not going to use this water for energy generation, the power generation, that will be again a disaster. Fourth thing, that water-related disasters, either floods or droughts, they also linked our environmental security at risk. So my argument is this: the climate change nexus is in fact environmental security, and environmental security, if you need ecology and domestic and industrial consumption, then you need water. If you want to develop and grow your agriculture, then you need water. If you want clean, neat, and cheap energy, then you again need water. And then if you want to sustain the disaster like flood and drought, then you need again water reservoirs. In condition where there's a drought, they can supply and ensure a regulated water supply. And in case of any flood, they can work as a water flood protection device. So with this context, we have big challenges for water, food, and energy, and water is in the center. And the problem what we're facing over here, environmental problem that I explained in the context of environmental security and the disasters. But on top of all these things, the biggest problem is the governance, how we govern the water resources. So governance for the energy, food, and water. If it is a good governance, you can improve the environment and you can even manage the disaster or reduce the disaster risks. So in this context, this is very important. Now the nexus, the climate change and water, they are intimately linked. There is no doubt in that. Whereas the climate change is intensifying both water scarcity and water-related hazards like floods and droughts, as rising temperature disrupt precipitation patterns and the entire hydrological or water cycle. So in this case, if your hydrological cycle is going to disrupt or your precipitation is going to disrupt, then ultimately floods and drought will be the result and the climate change will be the main driver. Second, the Pakistan has the 4th highest rate of water use because of the huge population and what you call inefficient use of water. This makes it is an economy more water intensive than other regional countries in the South Asia. Presently, there are many figures, 92, 93, 95, and some studies say 95, 97% of the water is used for agriculture and irrigation purpose. So water scarcity can be a significant crisis because that's going to affect the agriculture. And if you are going to have an agro-based economy, ultimately going to suffer the economy, and that will definitely affect your socioeconomic fabric. So because the population growth and consumption pattern of an expanding middle class that is expanding, in less than 2 decades, 3 key demands will sharply increase. And these 3 demands are again water, food, and energy. So pressure from the population side, pressure from increased urbanization, and demands of the large middle class. These 3 pressures, they are going to have an energy-intensive desalination efforts, use energy to produce drinkable water. Then you need energy again for drinkable water. For food production, you need again water. And for food production requires energy to plant and harvest, because there are what you call agromechanics these days, mechanized harvesting, mechanized agriculture. They also need again energy sources. So in this context, this nexus is very important nexus. Now we join this together, the climate, water, energy, and food as a nexus. So what we see here, that water for energy you need for the cooling, for hydro power generation, for extraction of the oil exploration wells, another area. Then we need energy for water. If you want to extract water, you need motors and engines and all these things. Then for transportation and for treatment of the water. Then water for food, feed and fiber. That will definitely impact the land on use practices on water resources. Then energy to food. So these triangular are in fact in between. They are linked with one another, that you cannot separate it. And the main driver again, climate change, whatever we call due to GHG emissions or rising temperature or the warming. But the climate is the central figure, and this triangle of water, energy, food, and fiber, that is very important for us. So looking at the vulnerability of Pakistan to climate change. Like other countries in South Asia, we are most vulnerable, sometime in top 5, sometime in top 8, sometime in top 10, but never we have gone beyond 10. So it's a large part of economy that is based on water intensive agriculture. And that agriculture is climate sensitive. And if there is a change in the climatic conditions, your agriculture is going to change, and water will again be the driver. If there is a flood, your agriculture is going to affect. If there is a drought, your agriculture is going to affect. So it has long scientific and technological base with limited capacity to generate knowledge. Research base is not that strong. That is another vulnerability. So it has adequate capacity to adopt the conditions resulting from the change in climate. The capacity to adopt is again not adequate. That is again a vulnerable point. And next is a lack of institutional coordination, financial and institutional capacity to deal with the challenges of climate change, whether in water sector, energy sector, agriculture sector. So these conditions, they made the climate change and water nexus more stronger. So at the end, for me, the most critical element in coping with climate change and climate variability from a water resources perspective is the political and institutional dimensions that otherwise require water governance. So what we need is a better way to approach water resources management, tandem with each other, and then several strategies can be implemented to complement existing approaches to fill this gap. So looking at the governance of water, food, and energy, we have to identify the gaps, we have to fill those gaps, and certainly the governance has to play a very crucial role. Thank you very much.
Dr. Irfan, thank you very much for very informative presentation. There's an announcement for the participants. The chat is disabled. However, you can ask your question in the question answer box. So we will receive and respond you after the presentations. So now I would like to invite our today's second speaker, Dr. Rabail Urooj, for her presentation. Dr. Rabail Urooj, please.
I'm audible, Dr. Malik?
Yes, you're audible.
And my screen has been shared with you. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Malik, and thank you so much, organizers, and thank you to whom who have been joined today's webinar. I'm thrilled to be here with you all to discuss about the geospatial technique for the water resource monitoring and sustainable management. And your presence is truly appreciated. And I'm looking forward to our discussion. But before going to dive into the world of a geospatial technique for the water resource management, let's take let's take a moment to reflect on something we all have common, like the water, our dependence upon the water, whether we are using water for our drinking purposes, for agriculture, or for the industrial usage. It is a natural resource, not a commodity, but unfortunately, it has become a commodity. Because we are selling and buying water nowadays in a market, and that is a very unfortunate thing. And we all knows about the tragedy to this common. Today, talk will explore about how geospatial technique can help us to better understand and manage this precious resource. And I am very excited to share this with all of you, and I hope you will find our discussions both very informative and inspiring. So water scarcity and issues related to the water management, that is not a problem of one place, actually. It's a problem of everywhere nowadays in Pakistan. And because any issues related to the environmental resources that happen in a one location, it could happen anywhere. And globally, we are facing lots of the alarming problems, different conditions due to the climate change in temperature, variation in intensity, and day by day increasing encroachment of global population and the duration of the rainfall. So water scarcity, if we talk about that, water is an essential resource on our planet. Its availability and the quality are the critical for the wide range of the human and the environmental needs. About 40% of the global populations are facing the issue of water scarcity, and every third out of 10 people lack access to the safe drinking water. However, water is undergoing increasing pressure from the different factors like population growth, climate change, and the land use change patterns. And about 1.2 billion people drinking dirty water every day, and 2.3 billion people are living in the water-stressed countries. Just because of, I can say that it's just because of the weak and the poor management. So I can say that we are on a fire, and if we want to act, but the action without understanding can be ineffective or even more damaging. So what we need to do, we need to perform some kind of the activities, like sometimes it requires boots on the ground, sometimes the informations from the peoples around the world, but this will only plot a level information. But when we combine the data across the globe, then we start to get the global perspectives. And when we combine that information with the satellite data, then we start to get the spatial patterns across the globes to reveal the scenario. And when we combine that with the satellite data, then we start to get the spatial understanding to reveal the scenarios and start getting to understand the science of the world for this natural world. So geospatial techniques, if we talk about the geospatial techniques is an emerging field of a science that consisting of three disciplines: geographical information system, satellite remote sensing, and the global positioning system. And all these three technologies, they are described the range of the modern tools, contributing to geographical mapping and the analysis of the Earth and the human society. And if we particularly talk about the geographical information system, now it's very common, and most of the people have understandings and they are trained on the GIS, the geographical information systems that provide the visual framework for the conceptualizing, understanding, and the most important, that is the prescribing action. As the Dr. Irfan said that we have to fulfill the gap between the the government and the institutional framework. But if we are using the different technology, so we can prescribe the more appropriate actions to solve all those problems which are facing nowadays by the peoples regarding to the water resource management. So geographical information system is also helpful in mirroring of the different environmental resources, very helpful and easy to use for the visualization and the mapping for analysis and making the model for the future, and for planning and designing, and of course in making informed decision and prescribing action. So a scientist gathers the vast amount of the data to track the environmental problems and to investigate the nexus. Spatial reasoning is crucial for analyzing and synthesizing findings from the source, such as the remote sensors and the satellite imageries. And if I talk about particularly for the responsibility of a GIS professionals, they with the varied expertise, knowledge, and having experience of the best practices for implementing this advanced technology to monitor both the water resources, quality, and the management. And by using this valuable technology, it's important for the identification of the current and future risk and the vulnerability of the water, particularly freshwater scarcity, and very helpful for designing the water management. Because in the comparison to the usage of the GIS, we have a traditional decision support system in the water resource management, which we are using in a different governmental institutions, but they have been characterized by the limited decision-making scope, just because that decision support systems are they are the typically based upon the black box optimization model that is understandable by only the technical persons and developed just for the specific purposes. But in a comparison to the traditional decision support system, GIS and the other visualization tools, they are the better to read and they understand data tools to help understand. It's a very cost effective, providing a very having a very accurate efficiency for the future models. And depending upon the design and specifications, these models indicate actions to perform given sets of different coexistence constraints, and of course, understand the consequences of different operating policies and the management alternatives. So researchers are using GIS for the water resource management in variety of the ways because GIS provides the solutions which are the very cost effective resulting from the different efficiency. It provides the better informed decision. It has improved communication, better geographical information, record keeping, and managing geographically. Well, along these, the researchers also use the GIS to investigate the relationship between the climate change and change water's cover, and trying to visualize variety of the factors that have the potential to impact water supply and the quality. And also monitoring the carbon content required, the use of the GIS technique, so because GIS technology also used to map the forest carbon, that is have the direct relationship for the as a capturing of these water inside into the ground. So software-based GIS mapping and assessment are very effective in geographical planning, identifying changes in environment and integration action. Plus, the GIS simulations can also be very helpful and used to determine the impact on our water in a specific location. And utilizing of geographical information system data, climatic mapping, and estimation for predicting the future climate changes. And it's very helpful in determining the impact on a specific location, as I told you. So, and we have used the GIS as a tool for the different projects conducted in the Quetta city, particularly. And of course, I do believe that the in other provinces it has been applied for the different projects. Like in the Quetta Valley, we have two water basins, and we have used the geospatial analysis for the watershed monitoring and the management. And we have also used to allocate the different water resource body along the watershed boundaries, and as a monitored the dam where it is required, and how we can construct the dam at the different elevation, and what kind of the policy measures should be taken by the government. And we have also used the GIS tools for analyzing to check and assess the usage patterns of the land, like the shifting trend of the watershed by the different classes. And we can also use the different tools like to assess the potential assessment of the groundwater by calculating the hydrological budget by using the digital alleviation models and the different hydrological indicators by using the technique of the analytical hierarchical process. That is one of the tools that is built with the ArcGIS. And we can also propose the locations of the dam, the appropriate location of the dam, and we can also to study the vulnerability if the certain kind of the suggestions comes for the construction of the dam. So it's a better to GIS model to allocate the location, and that would be a very helpful at the governmental level if they incorporate to make a DCM for constructing a dam at any location. So I want to add one thing is that the poor and the weak management that is the actually contributing towards to so the water scarcity and the unavailability of the water, because we have seen examples of so the flood in the year 2022 in the last month of August, when we see that the fresh water, how the fresh waters that is going away, the loss of economy that happened in the Pakistan, because 33 million people got affected in 116 districts due to the heavy rainfalls as a result of the climate change. But because we didn't have the proper managing facilities, we didn't channelize that water, and that ran away and affected the whole Pakistan. So by using the different geospatial special technique like the satellite remote sensing and the GIS, we can use that those techniques for monitoring the flood. And we can't eliminate those hazards, but we can reduce the intensity of those hazards. So all these are the sum of the applications of the GIS and how we can use those GIS and the geospatial techniques for the different environmental issues and for managing the environmental problems, particularly the scarcity of the water and managing the water. So I would encourage you all to continue exploring the innovative applications of geospatial technologies in this field. Remember, the action we take today will shape the availability and the quality of water for generations to come. And let's work together to create more water secure future. Because the water safe water today or stay thirsty tomorrow. I took this quotation, and that is a very catchy quotation. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best in your endeavors to protect our planet's most precious resource. Thank you so much.
Dr. Bill, thanks a nice and knowledgeable presentation. Now I would like to invite Dr. J to share his experiences. Now, floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Malik. So thanks for having me as a speaker, and good morning to everyone in Pakistan and in the US. Our project that we've been working on in Pakistan is about adapting to salinity in the southern Indus Basin. And the focus of my talk today is about the future of groundwater irrigation and access and availability in South Punjab. That's where we've been working on this project. I'd like to acknowledge my team members, Abdul Rahim, who's leading this work as the national lead, and Dr. Saifullah from MNSUAM University, and Dr. Zakir from Punjab Irrigation Department. So we know that there are significant challenges for groundwater in Pakistan and particularly in Punjab. The figure on the right shows, let me skip this screen out. The figure on the right shows the increase in number of tube wells in Pakistan from 1970 on to the present time up till 2018. And you can see that the number of tube wells has increased dramatically to over 1.3 million. And out of those, Punjab probably has about 1.2 million tube wells or more. So the focus has been really on groundwater extraction and using groundwater for agriculture. And that over-extraction has caused declining groundwater levels and also quality issues in certain areas of Punjab. There's also this push for using marginal quality groundwater, as both of the previous speakers have mentioned, that water scarcity is a real issue in Pakistan. And so when there's not enough canal water available for agriculture, there's a tendency to use groundwater, and some of it, even marginal quality groundwater, is being used, particularly in the middle sections of the doabs in Punjab. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do in this project is trying to get a better understanding on the water balance, to understand how can we quantify all the different stresses on the system and use that to help us understand how salinity is affecting the landscape. But access to groundwater in Pakistan is really essential because we've seen frequent droughts and floods in Pakistan. And during those drought times, access to groundwater is vital, particularly for tail-end farmers. And then overlaying all this is the impact of climate change and the variability and uncertainty that it introduces, which is also increasing water demand. As Dr. Khan earlier said, higher temperatures, etc., will cause increase in water demand. And even with access to water, there is still low land and water productivity in agriculture, and that's an area that needs special focus. So the ACID project is about adapting to salinity in the Southern Indus Basin. It's led by Charles Sturt University in Australia, and together with national and international partners. And its main aim is to co-develop adaptation options and strategies with people living in salinity-affected agricultural landscapes. So the project has both a technical component and a very strong social research component. And we have our national partners like the SOFT team, which is the Society of Facilitators and Trainers who interface very closely with farming communities, and also IUCN as we have two sites, one in South Punjab and one in coastal areas of Sindh. And IUCN is very active in the coastal areas of Sindh. So the key aspects, sorry, give me a second. The key aspects of the study is what we intended to do was to develop a groundwater model for the southern Bahri Doab to improve our understanding of the impacts from declining groundwater levels and increasing salinity. And we also used the groundwater model to identify the aquifer response to overexploitation and to quantify the water balance. And this is an essential piece of information for managing aquifers. We then applied the groundwater model to simulate scenarios that allow us to get a better understanding of how climate change will impact the aquifer into the future. And understanding all these aquifer responses and system stresses is an important piece of information for institutional actors so that they can develop strategies for improving the management and governance of groundwater. So our study site is in the southern part of the Bahri Doab, and it's a rather large area. It's about 11,300 square kilometers, and it's bounded on this boundary, on the western boundary by the Chenab River, and on the southern boundary by the River Sutlej. And as everyone in Pakistan knows, the River Sutlej is basically a dry river, and it only receives occasional monsoon floods. So this is an area which is highly stressed because of the quantum of groundwater use in this area. So our conceptual model involves 3 layers. And this second layer is really important because most of the pumping in South Punjab happens from this second layer. But the top layer is significantly important because it supplies the water for recharging these lower layers, and also the third layer, as we will see later on in the presentation. So what's changing with time? So if you look at the monitoring data in South Punjab, and you'll see that in 2010, the depth to water table gives you a picture like this, and there were very few areas which had very deep water levels. But when you look at 2020, the area with deeper groundwater levels have increased significantly. And that's a cause for concern because not only is it impacting the water levels, but it's also impacting salinity. You can see this EC changes here between 2010 and 2020, where a lot of the area in the center of this model study has gone from fresh or relatively fresh to marginal quality. So when you look at the water balance, when we calibrated the model from 2010 to 2020, the important thing I wanted to show you was that you're seeing a decline in storage year on year of about over 500 million cubic meters per year. And that's what's causing some of this groundwater level declines and also salinity issues. So the water balance here informs us that there's an imbalance between inflows and outflows from the aquifer, which is resulting in this annual loss in groundwater storage. And if you look at the hotspots, this particular hotspot in South Punjab, and we undertook a zonal water balance for this area. And what this shows, it shows a very interesting phenomenon. It shows that as you increase pumping, as pumping keeps on increasing over this past 10 years, you see an inflow into layer 2 from layer 1. So basically you're dewatering layer 1 over time. And we'll see more of that a bit further. And you can see that although layer 2 is not dewatered as much, but you can see layer 1 has dewatered considerably. So we decided to look at a range of scenarios for simulation. So we started with a baseline scenario till 2060, where conditions remained similar to what they were between 2010 and 2020. And our second scenario looked at increasing pumping along the trend line that we observed from 2010 to 2020, which is the most recent trend in increase in trend in tube wells in the area. And our next two scenarios involve the SSP 4.5 and 8.5 scenarios. And lastly, we are looking at simulating extreme events. So this last scenario we will be conducting in the next few months. So when you look at the increased pumping scenario, what you see is that there's a significant loss in storage. From 500 MCM, you're now losing 929 MCM per year. And that has a significant impact on the groundwater system, and it brings into question the sustainability of the groundwater. So when we look at individual bores and how they behave for each scenario, the blue line shows the baseline scenario, which is just gradually decreasing, and probably well into the future, you could operate at that level. But when you start increasing pumping along that trend lines, you see that in scenario 2, there's a rapid decrease in groundwater levels. And this is right across the board that's happening in our model area. And what we see is an inflection point around 2040, which shows that beyond 2040, at this current level of increased pumping, water levels will start declining drastically. And this will obviously, in fact, impact groundwater availability, and water quality impacts will be observed. So when we looked at the SSP scenario, we found that the net groundwater storage is projected to decline by 2,185. So it's basically more than doubled from the increased pumping scenario up to 2060. So we've run this model a lot longer for the SSP scenarios. We ran it to 2100. But what it highlights is that the top layer you see here has dewatered. This dark maroon area here has totally dried out. And what that means is that many smallholder farmers who have shallow tube wells will not have access to groundwater unless they have the resources to deepen their wells. And that too, they'll be pumping groundwater of lesser quality, of lower quality. And the extent of depletion is quite significant in this top layer. And it's obviously going to be a significant concern to many farmers in this area, most of which are smallholder farmers. So we also intend in the next few months to run some adaptation options, and what we're looking at is a couple of what-if scenarios. So other parts of our team are working on improving land and water management practices. So that involves looking at where we can increase low delta crops, so which are more water use efficient crops, and particularly focusing that our efforts in these hotspot areas in southern Punjab. Included with that is increased adoption of laser leveling and bed and furrow systems, and matching irrigation applications to crop water requirements. And as we know that many farmers are already using marginal quality groundwater. So the question becomes, how can we have improved conjunctive use practices that will, lessen the impact of using marginal quality groundwater? Then there are other possible options, such as capturing monsoon floods in the Sutlej, which what I call is opportunistic recharge events. And then I guess the most important thing in this whole process, despite all of these adaptation options, you still need to build consensus within the community to moderate pumping during certain times of the year. So, and particularly when water is plentiful. And this is going to be really important as climate change impacts are being felt into the future. So some of the change practice strategies we have proposed or we're looking at are over the next 10 years is to convert flood to bed and furrow over the next 5 to 10 years, matching irrigation requirements and improving conjunctive use and better use of marginal quality groundwater. And some of those benefits will lead to water savings and salinity management and decrease in the rate of decline in groundwater hotspots. But we also think that it's important to look at the environment. And so this riverine area right along the Chenab, if possible, we are looking at options, how we can revegetate those areas which are not used for agriculture, which are close to the river system. And there's also a lot of government land along those areas which may be possible to use for revegetation. And then we're looking at options for managed aquifer recharge. Some of the work that's recently done in Charleston University by Dr. Zakir, who was a PhD student there, looked at the impact of managed aquifer recharge in the Old Malesey Canal. So rehabilitating that Old Malesey Canal, which is not being used, but diverting flood flows from the Sutlej into the Old Malesey to recharge the aquifer. So it's a mix of things. There's no one single answer that's going to help us with the water scarcity problems in Pakistan, but it'll be a mix of options that we need to look at. And in conclusion, some concluding remarks, we know that increase in groundwater pumping is well documented in Pakistan, and it's causing declines in water levels. But with this study, we found that after 2040, these declines will rapidly increase. And it'll be a possible denial of access to groundwater for smallholder farmers. And of course, emerging water quality problems will be widespread in southern Punjab. And our climate change scenarios, they show that climate change poses an existential threat to the sustainability of groundwater irrigation and to livelihoods of farmers in South Punjab. So we really do need to think out of the box as to what kind of options are available for us to help farmers to adapt into the future. And one of the key things that is going to be really important in terms of managing groundwater is to design improved monitoring systems and to build institutional capacity to map model and manage groundwater, the 3 M's, you know, mapping, modeling, and managing groundwater. And then assessing the long-term sustainable yield for groundwater management areas, and to develop water sharing plans with stakeholder agreement, because in these hotspot areas, we will need stakeholder agreements to moderate some of the pumping and without risking livelihoods. And then managing hotspots and adaptive groundwater management of groundwater resources. These are things that institutional actors will have to look at in the near future. Thank you for the opportunity to present our work.
Dr. J, thanks. You share a wonderful study to evaluate the water resources, storage, and the decline behavior of the stress aquifer. We need to compute our river basins using similar studies in Pakistan to sustain the use of liquid water resources. Now it's time for the question answer session. The speakers can see the question answers online. So my the first question was put by the Dr. Saqib Rasool. So I would like that Dr. Irfan, if you will explain how the climate resilience will be improved in terms of geopolitical context. Please, if you respond this question, I will be happy.
I think considering all these first 3 questions, it's a established field area now, what we call the environmental diplomacy or hydro diplomacy. The climate resilience, because we have to consider in the region, the neighbor country, that climate is a common enemy to all. We have to fight with the climate instead of fighting with each other. When we develop this kind of understanding, then we can have a common sense, because comparing with India, or Afghanistan, or Iran, all our neighboring countries, so climate is not geographically bounded like we have. This is Pakistan, this is India, this is Iran or China. Climate is on top of all things. So for this resilience, I think we have to make joint efforts. And second, between the water disputes, again, you see, in security and diplomacy terms, we have a national security policy. We do believe on the importance of the structural security, the traditional security, but I think we have to expand the horizon of the national security to include the water, energy, and food security within the national security context. Similarly, for our foreign policy, I think we have to include this energy, because we have like Pakistan-Iran pipeline, and from the Turkmenistan-Pakistan pipeline area, and with the CPEC with the China. So in the diplomatic terms, we have to again expand the horizon in our foreign policy. So that's the solution, because from the science to decision making and the diplomacy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khan Saab. The next question is for the Dr. Rabail. How the traditional decision support system will be replaced by the GIS-based solution in the governance, keeping a view of federal, provincial, and the local government context? Please, if you kindly respond to this one.
Sure. Actually, the traditional decision support system, that is rely on the structured data and of course, the derivative-free computer algorithm. We can replace that traditional system by incorporating the spatial data. So we can visualize and analyze the whole perspectives, what should we do, and how we can manage all those like the water related issues on the ground. And I'll say that by incorporating the real data feed in the decisions, that can be very effective for managing those issues on the spot. And the question that is asked is how we can incorporate into our legacy and at the governmental level. So if we have a trained person and different person got the training who are the working for the governmental institutions. So if we can incorporate the GIS and the satellite remote sensing for making a decision, so we can replace the traditional decision support system.
Thank you very much. I would like to request Dr. J. Kindly you explain how the climate resilience affect the salinity, and also another part of another question, how the top layers and the canal irrigation supply can be compared for the groundwater recharge.
Okay. So really to build climate resilience, we need to have adaptation options. So continuing to practice agriculture in the way we are practicing right now has to be looked at to see what options are there to manage agriculture better, manage water resources better, and a whole quantum of other things associated with agriculture. So for example, it's not easy just to propose a low delta or a water efficient crop, because you have to have well-developed value chains for those crops, because if there are no markets to sell those crops, there's no point growing those crops. So all these things are interlinked. So to build resilience, we need a range of adaptation options. I guess that's what the speaker's asking, or the question is referring to. And the second question, the top layer thickness and irrigation supplies. So the top layer thickness in the model we use was about 30 meters. And that incorporated all the canals and the rivers and recharge in the top layer. And the second layer was where most of the pumping, or all of the pumping, happened. So between 30 and 90 meters in South Punjab. And then we have a third layer, but I didn't discuss that aspects of the third layer, but that's not being pumped. But it is a source of water into layer 2 when you have very high pumping rates.
Thank you very much, Dr. J. You did a work regarding the irrigation and the water resources management at Balochistan. I am the witness of that work. You have a very good experience in the lowland and the highland areas for the modeling and the water resources management. I have a question. How much of the model you used in the southern Punjab is useful for the irrigation system we are using in the Balochistan, different aquifers? Maybe you can link how.
Yeah, basically the model can be used in Balochistan or South Punjab because we're using ModFlow, so it's a standard groundwater model. In terms of how you design the model, that's where the difference comes in, because Balochistan has got very complex geology. And as you know, when we worked a few years back on the Kuchlak model, that was a particularly difficult groundwater model because groundwater levels were declining by about 10 meters a year between 2010 and 2018. In those 8 years, groundwater levels were, I've not seen that anywhere else in the world, at 10-meter declines. So it was a very complex model to calibrate, etc. And there's virtually no recharge because the water levels are so deep. So basically you're taking water from existing resources, which are basically fossil groundwater resources. And at some point in time, Balochistan, at least in the Kuchlak Basin, you will run out of water. There's only so much you can, deepen wells. And some of the wells in that area are quite deep already. But basically, the model can be used. I mean, nowadays, there are so many different types of models. But I think more important than different kinds of model is how do we start to understand what are the uncertainties with these models? Because of course, your model depends on your conceptual model and then your simulations, and how do you assess this uncertainty involved in your simulations. So those are things, and you really have to test different conception models in complex environments.
Thank you very much for a detailed response. So there's another question from Dr. Muhammad Shafqat Ijaz. How many observation locations in the Quetta Valley, groundwater monitoring? So maybe I can respond this one. So the WASA department, and there's another section in the agriculture department for the groundwater monitoring. They are working for the groundwater monitoring in the especially in the Quetta Valley. So as per my knowledge, our university they has implemented a project, and they are monitoring the 17 different locations in Quetta Valley. So they have very good data. Maybe if you have some concerns, or maybe if you need to use some data for the future, you can contact to the Beauty University, and maybe this data is available for further research. So we have some other questions, but due to the limited time, I would like to go towards concluding today's session. So I would like to thank the honorable speakers and HESSA team for their facilitation. So if we conclude today's presentations and what we discussed, so it is the cause for the great concern that Pakistan water resources are under severe stress. The climate change, rapid population growth, and mismanagement of the water resources. The application of the latest software could be helpful to monitor, assess, and planning for the sustainable use of limited water resources. Agriculture practice should be more focused for the efficient irrigation system for the ensure the food security, enhance the livelihood of the farmer, and boost of the economic activities in the region of Pakistan. So I'm very glad if you share your feedback in the chat session. So now for the concluding remarks, I would like to invite Dr. Ken, Chief of Party USAID-HESSA. So please, Dr. Ken.
Thank you, Dr. Malik. This has been a very fascinating and important discussion today about the water challenges in Pakistan and how scientific research can help us meet those challenges. So in my closing remarks, I simply would like to ask Dr. Malik if he would work with the presenters to give us a report on 3 points. Number 1 is, to what extent are you and the esteemed presenters working with government agencies and government officials to implement your findings and your recommendations? That's the first request. The second one is, are you exploring the possibilities of collaboration among yourselves? The 4 of you, that would be very, very helpful if the 4 of you esteemed researchers and scientists could collaborate together on your research. And then number 3, would you please tell me if you are exploring some opportunities for research funding and perhaps submitting joint proposals to funding agencies. So, and HESSA stands ready to assist you with any of these 3 initiatives. So let me thank all of our participants and all of our audience members for a very, very important webinar that addresses one of the most serious problems of facing the people of Pakistan. So thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks, Dr. Malik. Thanks, Dr. Kenneth. And thanks
Thank you
to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.